allegations of inappropriate behaviour. A statement from his wife issued on his behalf said it had been 5 extremely difficult days for their family and that they were releasing his name out of concern for his mental well-being. So where do tonight's developments leave us and the BBC? Well, Andy Barr is an expert in crisis management and CEO of 10 Yetis digital consultancy agency and joins us now. Thank you very much for giving us your time, Andy, on the 9. The name is now out. Is this the best thing that could happen in terms of dealing with the situation from the perspective of Hugh Edwards, the perspective of the BBC and the young person involved in the allegations?
Oh, very much so. I think now the public clamour to find out who it is can be set to one side, and he can get about trying to fix himself and make sure he's okay. I think it's been a very tough time for him, for the BBC, and I think the tables are turning now, and it's starting to be a tough time for the Sun by the look of it.
We'll get to that in just a minute. If we focus on the BBC just now, give us a little bit of insight into how an organisation as big as the BBC goes about trying to deal with this situation.
Well, I think there's no secret to they've not dealt with it fantastically for the first few days. They were slow to react, but you know what? I think people expect that. It's a juggernaut of an organisation, and when you think about the amount of respect that the likes of the BBC News teams have had or do have, I don't think it's going to affect them in any way. It's more about the corporate side of it and how it's been handled.
Do you think the corporate side of things have not been as transparent as they could have been?
Oh, very much so. I think when stories come out saying that this was first presented to the corporate team in May, but the Director General didn't hear about it until last Thursday, you think, actually, there's an escalation issue here. There's a process issue here. But as I say, I think the corporate side of the BBC is known for being a little bit slow, and they've not really learnt about the 24-hour news media and the sort of cesspool of social media that you have to feed all the time.
Yeah, social media has played a huge part in this story. Talk to me a little bit about public pressure via social media. There has been a huge demand to know who this BBC presenter is from the very beginning. What is the impact on how businesses and companies deal with a situation like this going forward, with the idea that so many people are so interested in some of it and sometimes looking for blood?
Oh, it's an absolute scandal, and I think this is just yet another case for regulation of social media, and I think that's going to be one of the fallouts of this, is that, you saw his name being bandied around, actually being suggested in search boxes on platforms like TikTok, which is, really out of order. And I think the BBC legal team themselves have said that there's going to be a lot of defamation cases coming from this, and and that can lead to personal bankruptcy. So yeah, social media has been an absolute cesspit, and it's really dangerous for any celebrity and any brand or organisation out there.
Does the fact that it is a BBC figure like Hugh Edwards, someone who is such a big name, someone who has been trusted by so many people, watching him on the 10 o'clock news, watching him on various different events the BBC has put on over the years, over the decades, does that make it harder for the BBC to regain trust after all of this?
Well, I think, as I say, the news team have no real damage here. I think Hugh's the guy that obviously told us that the Queen had died, and he's a hugely loved character. And I think the news team, they've done nothing wrong here, and they've still got that global respect. I think it is very much aimed at the corporation, but as I say, I think there's so many other organisations involved in this now and up on the ropes that it's actually worked out very well for the BBC in terms of their reputation, how they've handled it has done very well in the end.
Yeah, it can, of course, be open to interpretation, and I'm sure there's many people that are sitting watching right now, many people who have been on social media over the past 5 days that maybe disagree with that maybe think that the BBC has not handled this well at all. If we talk about the Sun newspaper, though, the Met Police have said that there's no criminal case to answer in terms of their investigation. Where do you think this leaves the Sun newspaper with their initial allegations and their storytelling of this entire story?
Well, I think just to go back one stage there, I think the BBC were criticised for the way they handled it, but there was very little they could actually say because there was a pending police investigation. Now the police have come out and made their statement. The attention is quite rightly flipping to the Sun. Could they have actually stood up this story? Obviously, they've put out a statement earlier this evening saying that they're not going to print any more of the stories that they allegedly have around Hugh Edwards. So the Sun is under a lot of scrutiny, and it's flipped on them. And I think, this could be their news of the world moment.
In terms of moving forward, obviously, there's still more to come on this story, I'm sure of it. We haven't heard from Hugh Edwards himself, for example, and we know that, for example, he is now an inpatient in hospital, and we might not hear his thoughts or his side of the story for some time. But what do you think will happen next, Andy? Is there a quick fix on this, as it were, or is this something that is going to rumble on for some time?
Well, I think the most important thing is that he's given some time to get better. And I think, he's had well-publicised battles with depression. But no, there is no quick fix. The BBC needs to have a look at its corporate team and if reform is needed in terms of its escalation process and how quickly it can deal with crisis communication situations. But yeah, the onus now is on some of the other organisations that have been involved in this story.
OK. Andy Barr, thank you very much for giving us your time on the 9 this evening. Andy Barr, expert in crisis management and CEO of 10 Yetis digital consultancy agency. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Some of the day's other news now, and a murder trial at the High Court in Glasgow has heard a footprint on a teenager's bra found buried near her body.